I move one.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order if I could, please. Welcome to the Town of Pendleton's May Planning Commission meeting. If I could have a roll call, please, starting on my left. Sure.
Carol Rainey Hunt.
Brett Valentine.
Tim Pritchard.
Kyle Eichwald.
Jenny Sisson. Carol Hannah.
Thank you. Andrew is absent. He might come in, but we're not sure. Normally we do old business first, but it's okay with the board. I'd like to move that around, go to new business, since we do have a full crowd here concerning the assumed DR Horton petition. That's okay. We'll move to new business first. Do the UDO last. Okay, thank you. Okay, in new business, this is the primary plat approval for DR Horton's subdivision at 200 homes, I'm sorry. This would be 013 number. Remember, this particular petition has come before the Planning Commission prior and the Town Council. It has been approved for residential single-family homes from agricultural zoning. This meeting tonight is simply for the plat approval, which pertains to driveways, sidewalks, setbacks, infrastructures, shrubbery and mounds and various other things. So, Hannah, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, are we gonna put approval of minutes at the end as well?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, all right. Jennifer, we'll go to the third slide. So I'll just introduce this and then I'll let the petitioner speak and then we'll go to my analysis. So like Tim said, this is a property on the west side of the highway. It's 96 acres, 2 parcels total, and was just recently rezoned from Ag 1 to SF3 for a residential subdivision. You can see it there outlined in red. So that's really all I have to introduce it. Like Tim also mentioned, this is just the plating process. So this is one of 2 steps as far as plating goes. This is a primary plat, which is essentially just the basic layout. It's not hyper engineered yet. That's what happens in secondary plating. But you do also have the full plat application available in your G drive. If there's any pages you want to discuss with the petitioner, I just put a few in here, the overall and then the buffer yards and pedestrian paths. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So Lee, if you'd like to come up and talk about this.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. Mr. President, thank you all for having us here this evening. My name is Lee Phillips with DR Horton. I have with me this evening Mark Bridwell and Greg Kleiss from DR Horton, as well as Gordon Kritz and Leanne Farrell from Steppenworth and Associates, our engineer on the project. Between Mr. Pritchard and Hannah Rose, I think you guys gave a pretty good review of where we are and how we got here. We appreciate everyone's time. We are here for our primary plat approval of our 200 lot subdivision. Just very, very quickly, as means of review, we do have 3 different lot sizes. We have 60-foot lots, which there are 160 of. We have 80-foot lots, which there are 29 of. And then along County Road 600 West, we have 11 frontage lots, which are 100 feet wide. As it says in the report and on this slide, we do have proper right-of-ways. We show all of our sidewalks and paths and setbacks and things like that. So I'm not going to take a lot of time reviewing it because I know you likely have and you have the entire packet. If you could go to the next slide, please. And again, this slide shows, as we've said, our paths, our sidewalks, our buffer yards, our landscaping mounds, things like that. So we're very happy to answer any questions and we won't take up any more of your time. We do ask for approval of the plat this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Annie, you want to comment on that for me?
No, I just have my analysis
Okay.
that I can do, or if you have questions or.
Let's hold that for now. Questions.
Okay.
Questions from the board, comments? Sure.
Has anything changed at all, really, from the last time we reviewed this? And are any, if you want to note any
Sure.
significant changes.
I'll let Gordon chime in if I'm speaking incorrectly, but I believe the only change was a buffer yard, was increased, and that's along 600. I think we had it initially as a 40-foot buffer yard and it increased to a 60-foot buffer yard. So those, actually are a little further back off the road. And then there was a building setback line on the collector road, up on the very northwest. We just kind of standardized that setback line. Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
So down in the southeast corner, it looks like you have a pond in the county's regulated drainage easement. So have they reviewed and approved detention in their easement?
Hasn't been reviewed yet.
I guess my concern is you're showing a 30-foot type 1 buffer there in the county's easement, which they could wipe clean. Then we would have no buffer. So if they're willing to reduce that easement and still fit a buffer in there or something like that, maybe.
I know that.
I mean, they would have to get drainage board would have to approve that pond there at some
Correct.
point. so.
Yeah, and there was a preliminary drainage review done. I don't know if Gordon wants to speak to that, if anything like that was looked at. But we don't require a drainage review in the primary planning stage, just a stormwater narrative. That basically says you will follow whatever jurisdictions are needed. Can you speak up? Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
And so this will follow the new drainage manual that was adopted last year.
Yeah. So Gordon, does that include anything in that narrative? Or that preliminary drainage review?
Not for the drainage board.
Okay,
So that'll come with construction plans then.
Sure.
So if adjustments need to be made, then.
Secondary. Jim, Carol? Questions or comments from the audience? I don't know if that was a stretch or raise your hand, Robbie. Thank you.
I'm Cassie Tate. I live at 6655 South 600 West. I was wondering if there was any update on the traffic study being done on the road, or if you could clarify whether the road would be widened before the neighborhood is built or after. We're all kind of concerned about the traffic.
First of all, which road are you referring to? Okay, thank you. The traffic study is, we've received a draft. Have you guys received it? Okay, we received a draft of it. It should be being finalized and sent to you. I kind of thought you might have had it already,
Scott,
so.
did you get it from ANF, SNF?
Okay, so it should be finalized and sent to you guys at any day, anytime. I don't believe that the widening of 600 was included in the scope of the traffic study, though.
Really?
I don't believe so, but I don't know that for sure.
Well, we would be either crediting impact fees to widen that road, or the town would do it concurrently with the subdivision. So it's really on the developer which way they want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we understand we have to pay the impact fees, the road impact fees per lot.
And typically that will come towards the end of the project, so it'll tear up the new road as they
Right.
construct the subdivision.
I guess one of the questions would be, which entrance are you going to utilize for all the construction traffic?
I believe we made a commitment in our
That's the
commitments that it has to be 38,
Yes.
that we would not use 600 as a construction
I
entrance.
think that's in your
It is, yeah.
comments, Lee.
And Jennifer, if you go to the previous slide, I'm pretty sure, oh no, that's it. Okay, but the flag does have a phasing in there that shows which phase will be built first. As far as how it will go from, north to south. So that 38 entrance will get built.
First, yes,
Yeah, that's on number 14. like,
Yes.
your
yes,
Commitments.
right.
So with all of the construction traffic coming in off 38, there should be no wear and tear impact on 600. So there shouldn't be a need to delay reconstruction of 600 till the very end of the project then?
Well, depending on when that phase of 11 houses is done, we would want to do it after that.
Okay.
But
Because
just,
those would utilize 600 to get down there.
Correct.
but 600 is gonna get wide. Just in spite of anything that the traffic study shows.
Correct.
That
That would have
is-
to be brought up to a collector right of way status.
And that's not just a UDO requirement, that's gonna be an impact fee.
It would utilize the impact fees to
It's
do
not
that.
just a development requirement to do
I
that.
believe that there is a requirement to improve some roads around there, but I'm not really sure how it works with impact fees.
The impact fee has to be used first, basically. Okay.
If we have it, then we have to, or if we didn't have an impact fee, we would have to negotiate with.
Robbie,
Um,
could you go up to Sam, please? Oh,
you got drainage crossing from the west side of 600 to the east side. And I was want to know where you're gonna do that.
I believe it goes through the woods, it goes to the west, Foster Branch.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Horton?
Because presently there's an 8-inch pipe crossing the street and it ends up in my pond and I don't want a housing addition in my pond. We get rid of that or?
I can speak. to that.
Sure, go on up there.
Yeah, so there's actually quite a bit of water coming from the east over on Big Walker. It comes through the site, right through the middle, pretty much into the middle of the woods. So the only amount of water that's gonna continue to flow west underneath 600 is gonna be within the woods. All the development on the east side of the woods is gonna be collected through our storm systems and taken through our ponds. So that amount of water going through that small pipe under 600 is gonna be greatly reduced
So where do the ponds outlet at ultimately
to the south.
to the legal drain?
Yes.
So the middle one drains to the south one?
Yes.
You say woods, are you talking about that big white spot on that there?
Yes, the
Correct.
existing woods.
I just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, there's an existing ditch in there now. It's gonna be left alone. It's just gonna have reduced drainage going to it because we're picking everything up, all the offset from the east and our own development.
Okay. We have questions or comments, everybody? Anybody online?
Anybody online? No.
Online?
Did Andrew happen to show up online? No? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I did have one other quick question.
Sure.
If you could scroll to the next slide, the slide that showed the buffers on the bottom of the page. Those are all per 100 feet, right? That doesn't really say that, but that's the
Oh.
intent.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it's written in the code is every 100 feet.
Okay.
And then it has to have so many shrubs. This doesn't show the kind of shrubs and trees. It would be, that'll come in secondary as far as making sure it's native species. But it's the general width. and height.
Hearing no other questions, Hannah, would you like to give your analysis, please?
Sure. So the function of planning staff is to analyze the petition against the UDO, current zoning, and any existing conditions for variances placed on the site to present facts and analysis. Based on that analysis, staff has the following comments. Layout is generally the same as the concept submitted and committed to during our rezoning phase, so that was one of the conditions. The lots, right-of-way widths, roadway widths, the asphalt back-to-back, and buffer yards are all sufficient per our code. The utilities and infrastructure have been deemed sufficient to supply the subdivision for secondary planning, of course, getting down to the engineering phase. The infrastructure, as we mentioned, like 600 will be improved upon construction. As far as phasing goes, that'll be hashed out with the developer. And then a majority of the set of commitments from the rezone phase will be addressed in the secondary planning for the most part. And then lastly, the plat is not interest public health, safety, or welfare. That is all we have.
Thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome.
Nobody else online or anything? I might come back one. Any further questions from board? Carol?
Can you just talk about the timing again, when you think the phasing and when everything would start, what your plans are?
Sure. We would anticipate that we'll have to go through more plating, construction plan work for the next few months. We would like to start mid to late summer and hopefully wrap up our first phase of the development as the weather turns towards the end of the year.
Yep.
Good.
No further questions or anybody? Okay. All right, based on that, I'll make a recommendation to make a motion to approve 2024-1 primary plat approval as submitted. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Carol. I have a second. All those in favor of 2024-1 as submitted in detail, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
And if you want to go to the next slide, I have some updates on site plans that have been submitted. So Community Health Network has been approved. They had a really good pre-con meeting with us. They're looking to break ground late May, early June. And then we have a car wash. You might see some earth moving out by the Needlers outlot, kind of in between this Speedway entrance on 36 and then the Needlers entrance on 36. There's a car wash going in there. We're still working out some site plan details with storm and electric on that, but it's pretty much ready to go. And they'll be submitting that and the building permit at the same time. So we've already kind of reviewed the architecture requirements too.
Good.
So that's all I have with planning. I think we'll move into the TIF resolution.
Okay.
This is not, I'm saying it's not.
Is that other Serenity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Serenity.
First one, Tiff, Matt?
Do you want to go through that or the benefit analysis?
Yeah,
need to go.
yeah, we're gonna kind of give a overview. You wanna go ahead and start with the maps and.
If we could, so.
Let's take a 5-minute recess,
Yes.
please. Thank you.
Take your questions. That's fine.
I don't have this internet connection.
Something's wrong with our router.
I've been looking at Jenny's, so I thought, well, and then mine just like broke up.
Something's wrong with our things like that. And we just
Yeah,
This one
got.
has some.
So
We
big
just
picture,
got-
we're converting our servers from here to offsite.
Yeah.
And so there's, of course, gonna be bugs. It's all new servers. We've updated all our software. It's
No excuses.
no excuses.
Can I take my cleats off in your office?
Yes.
She got it looking in, I guess, I know she wanted in.
I got her.
You know, did you ever have a chance to look at that common area in the northwest corner of Carrick Glen?
Yeah.
That never
Like
got.
the trash?
You know, with all the junk in it, and the
The-
dirt and piles.
Okay.
You know, the
Oh,
wetlands
yeah.
that are these.
The one that you
quarters,
bought.
The one that I have to look at every time I see it, that's full of dirt and weeds.
I got it.
So some plans show that it's.
I know.
Yeah.
Did you
So
like
I'm
it?
curious.
I know we had Brett go and talk to them
I
about.
have two kids and I never got a foul.
Picking that up and cleaning that area up.
You'll look really cute in those pink shoes, Scott.
Well, that one.
Those your size?
I love these donuts.
And there's like,
She's got a ball of
I
that.
think you're right, but I didn't think there was any trees. Yeah, there's nothing on there, right?
one, it was supposed to be, they left the other area because that was a wetland. And the other corner,
Well, I think
the
I-
northwest corner is supposed to be like
There.
manicured and not be. Cause I went over there and bush hogged it once and mowed in, there's a bunch of junk in there. Or we were like clods of dirt where they just kind of shoved everything off and left it.
And they're getting near to closing.
So probably, yeah, but while you still have.
Socks out.
Awesome, like
Well,
Australia. You guys are making fun of my daughter's shoes.
That's the reason I said
I
it.
thought they were your shoes.
Mother-in-law got them.
You gotta
I
wear 'em.
remember which section of plane.
That's right. And there.
It's the northeast, then.
Northwest.
Northwest. Would have been one of the last. Would have been probably three. Yeah, that final phase. No.
And I think you're right. I think there were like three
I think
trees.
there was supposed to be
mean-
a couple trees.
The landscaping is pretty sparse out there, you know, live and learn. So, yeah.
This is what I found.
I didn't.
How come those aren't Canadian?
It's just all of one.
Yeah.
No, they're. that's
I
classy.
kind of do that too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Australian, I've read it.
Well, I mean.
It's got the
some-
stars on it.
Oh, I didn't see this.
Did you see my brother-in-law lives there?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's reconvene the meeting, if you could, please.
Okay.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Well, Scott and I, we are, do we need to officially resume this? I apologize.
He did.
I did.
Okay. Sorry,
Which
thank
one are
you.
you under, Denise?
We are under new business B, the Serenity Allocation Error and Related Matters.
Which one?
It's a folder within,
I got it.
Got it?
Exhibit,
Serenity.
Executed.
exhibit A and B.
yeah, there should be 9 attachments within the folder.
Which attachment are you?
We got 9 attachments.
Okay, yes.
We're gonna
Okay,
start with the first one.
number 1, the map. Yeah,
That makes sense.
yes, yep. And Jennifer, she's gonna put that also on the projector screen and. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry about all the technical issues we're having tonight, so we'll get through that. So, so Scott and I, we're here on behalf of the Planning Department and also the Redevelopment Commission to share with you the Serenity Community Development Project proposal and to present to you the resolution piece or 24 PC-1. It's titled Determining that a Resolution Adopted by the Town of Pendleton conforms to the plan of the development of the town and thus then approves that said resolution. Town Manager Scott Reske, he is going to tag team with me on this presentation. I'm going to kind of introduce and get us started, and then he'll take over and then provide some more detail as to how this all will work. I'm going to start off by first identifying the parcels in which this community development proposal relates. So as you see up here on the screen, this resolution, which there's 2 of them that were recently approved by the Redevelopment Commission, is shows here outlined. It's the JBK parcel, and that parcel has now been split up into 3 different parcel IDs. So back when it went through a rezone change request and then also a slight amendment to that rezone change, there was just 1 large parcel, which consisted of 73 acres. Since then, they are working on parceling out those. So the very front 2 parcels there that are highlighted in yellow. So the entire blue outline, thank you, Scott, parcel is the 73 acres. Then they're right up off of State Street there. There's 2 red parcels. Those are zone general business. Then also to the west of there of South or of North Heritage Way, those are actually zoned general business as well. Then if you recall, when we went through the rezone process, when it changed from ag, we've got actually our zoning map is reflecting here how that's
Yeah.
parceled out currently.
Because I'm not gonna change it till there's actual recorded parcels, because then it just looks like a blob of colors. So it's hard to.
Yeah, so the very front parcels are all zoned general business. Then if you recall, that middle section was zoned as multifamily. Then where that swell and drainage ditch is reckoned open space. And then there was also 3 light industrial lots then to the north there of that parcel. So this proposal pertains to the entire outlined area there in blue, but yet is specific to those 3 parcel identification numbers there. We want to point out that as part of this rezone request was the condition and the commitment for a roadway, a 4-lane boulevard to go through pretty much the center of that main parcel there. And that was earmarked as a desire and a need through several of our planning documents. That includes our thoroughfare plan, our I-69 interchange master plan, as well as our road impact fee zone improvement plan. So from there, going end to end, we have identified that as a need for our community. So several months ago, after the rezones had been confirmed and taken place and approved by and recommended favorably by your board and then ultimately approved by the town council, we were approached by JDK Kids Incorporated, in which they proposed that these 3 parcels were created as their own new TIF district and allocation area. And that would be with the desire then to enter into a Serenity Economic Development Agreement with the town in exchange for JDK Kids to absorb the cost and the construction of this desired roadway. This much needed 4-lane road, including public utilities as well, to accommodate our transportation impacts that we anticipate with the growth of our community. So as these 3 parcels are already established in an existing TIF district, so we'll go to the second map here below. If you can scroll down a little bit, Jennifer. This map shows the existing TIF district. So this is the Pendleton Economic Development Area number 1. So through the Redevelopment Commission, we actually have 3 TIF districts, plus we just recently went through an additional 13 properties for their own TIF district. So that's the 4th one that's kind of just been up and running. But for this first district here, this here, the green area shows where that TIF district lies. And within that TIF district,
You want this?
yes, I'll take that. Sorry. Thank you very much. You'll see that this is the subject parcel right here. So you'll see where it lies and where it exists within this existing TIF district. So to accomplish the goal and the ask from JDK Kids, in order to make this its own TIF district, we had to go through a process, and we'll kind of go over that a little bit in detail here in a few, but we needed to remove this parcel from the existing TIF district, and then we needed to go through a resolution adoption to create then the new district, not only including that parcel, that larger parcel number 1, but then now since we have the 2 side parcels there that have been separated out, adding then those 3 parcels within a new TIF district and allocation area. So, so then in doing that, we've probably been in the last 6 months going back and forth in negotiation. We've done a lot of research on this. I know personally, I've learned a lot in this process. We have had Sharif Kulkarni, he is the lead developer for JDK Kids Incorporated. He has his legal team, which is Scott Fissel. He is through Krieg and DeVault there in Carmel. And then we also have our own bond counsel, which is Thomas Pittman. He is from Barnes and Thornburg. So we have been really working hard to kind of dive into the legalities of this plan, making sure that the negotiations were fair, and also conducting an in-depth benefit analysis. And we really feel that and confident that we came up with a good plan that not only upholds the goals and objectives of our planning documents, we believe that it is in the best interest for our community as a whole as we grow. So just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a touch on the main points of the resolution. So Jennifer, if you want to point or bring up resolution 24-PRC, which is Pendleton Redevelopment Commission -1. This is the first of 2 resolutions that were presented to the Redevelopment Commission on April the 4th. So the purpose of this this resolution that was approved by the Redevelopment Commission, the purpose for this was to exactly what I just said, to remove that 1 parcel out of the existing TIF district and then add those 3 parcels and designate that as its new own TIF district and allocation area. So any of those TIFs, so as those that aren't familiar with the TIF program, the way it works is once it's established and we go through the process and we get it confirmed, then what will happen is any of the taxes that are created based on value over the base rate at the time of once that TIF was established, then those funds will then be captured and those funds will then be utilized and then applied to that allocation area that TIP district has been earmarked for. So for this, we just kind of went through that process. That resolution there just designates that, and then those TIF funds will be captured for the next 25 years. It'll just be captured from those 3 parcels only, and will then be used for those 3 parcels only as well. As far as part of that resolution, if you want to go down a little bit farther, it's in your Google Drives if you want to look at it more in detail, but on down, there are some exhibits there. Is it? The scroll, keep scrolling down there. There's some exhibits, and what it outlines, is it being a little slow? Yeah, but going. You'll see some exhibits there. Maybe not on this one, I apologize. We may not have gotten there, but we have there. That's not on there too. I
Yeah,
apologize. I don't
that's a
think it
20-page one. I think it's down at the bottom. Keep going.
might be there. It outlines the projects that are identified, that are anticipated to be developed here in the 5+ years. That includes, yeah, right here, sorry. That includes the general business, the multifamily, and then also then the light industrial at the end. If you scroll down a little bit, I think it should give a little bit of breakdown in detail. Yeah, there we go. So keep on going down further. And then keep on going to sections. So there are those sections. So that is the projects that are anticipated at throughout the next 5-10 years. And then if you go, is it just that mouse?
He wanted the drawing.
Oh, you wanted the drawing instead. Okay. So you'll see here, there is general business here, the 5 lots anticipated to be general business off the road front of State Street. Then there's multifamily, and then you'll see the light industrial here. As you recall, you're going to see a little bit of inconsistency with the rezone. This is just conceptual at this time. The rezone called for a light industrial development to be right in this area. If he does decide to expand additional multifamily in here, he will have to come back to the board and to be able to seek another amendment to that rezone. So that is just kind of a conceptual plan, and that helped us establish what we felt that would be a conservative, reasonable expectation as far as what project total would be generated, and then thus then the TIF revenues from that throughout the next 5, 10, 15 years plus. So Jennifer, you go on down a little bit farther. This breaks down a little bit more in detail, kind of what the developer is envisioning for this property. And then on the next slide.
So are they limited to those uses? Because it says will feature. It doesn't say shall, but so area 2 and 3 don't have to be, they can be industrial for zoning? Or is it gonna be residential?
Do you remember any?
Is there flexibility in
We-
that or? Because it says section 3 will feature approximately 140 rental units, so.
If it was multifamily, as long as it fits the code, it could be however dense multifamily allows.
Well, I'm not saying for the number, I'm saying for the type of development, because it was rezoned for light industrial in that grand section.
Yeah, no, that's a
So,
good
so
point.
can they
If
choose to do light industrial in the middle and still have it in the TIF? I mean, doesn't,
If they were to switch out that chunk of multifamily for light industrial, does it still count with this tip if they decide not to rezone it? Or,
I mean, this
yeah.
doesn't
The
hold them
TIF
to any particular
No.
scheme or anything.
What it is
I don't
locked
think
in is
TIF
the
does.
boundaries of
No,
the
the
property.
TIF, the TIF
TIF
doesn't
doesn't,
care.
zoning would.
Zoning
Yeah.
would, but TIF doesn't care. Is that?
We're just
Yeah.
looking at the tip.
Yes, we're just creating those parcels as a district.
So what
and
you're
allocate.
explaining is we had to come up with what the projected value of all
Yeah.
this. I think it was
For the
about
increment,
25 million.
Yes.
And it was based on this.
Okay.
And so, which I think, yeah, it makes sense.
So again, it doesn't have anything to do with what is actually, it's gonna be, when we're talking about permissible, we're talking about the infrastructure that is gonna be
Yeah, what did the rezone, when we rezoned it, what?
We're always thinking about rezone.
The
What's actually
rezone
being
just
built.
bumped out the wall for the general business. It kind of
Yeah,
widened
just-
that up a little bit,
Yeah.
towards the north. He did not eliminate at that point, a light industrial. And we did have the conversations with Sheree Kulkarni that he will need to come through a rezone process again if he were to change any formal, land use. But as far as the allocation and the TIF district area, this is just more of illustrations, more of attachments of kind of what was provided for us to do the benefit analysis.
I think when I talk about the impact fee at the end, then this is a most likely scenario with the residential in the middle because he needs to capture. He'll be creating some impact fee credits, and he said that most likely he would, if it's residential or townhouses, he will develop those himself, and that'll give him the opportunity to capture a lot of impact fee credit. I'll talk about that in a minute, but this is the scenario that we felt most comfortable towards estimating what the total value would be.
But again, the TIF is only identifying an area that will generate tax money that can be used to build roads and
Yeah,
sidewalks.
I'm
It
gonna,
doesn't have anything to do
I'll
with
take
land
you
use.
through
Okay,
what
Yeah.
the agreement is.
okay.
Denise is giving you the background to get you up to speed, and then
Okay.
we'll start with the basics because it helps me about the traditional way of how TIF works and then how it's evolved over the last 10 years. And now most communities are going to a different structure. So we'll go into that here. in a second.
Yep.
In fact, is that probably,
Yep, no, that's right.
that's a good time to do it then?
Okay, a little bit more,
Okay.
a few more things. If you want to scroll down to the next page, just to show, this is an illustration of what we're going to talk about as far as the infrastructure investments that this developer is committed to provide to the town. So this is a roadway. These are the specs. And, being that it is to be a 4-lane boulevard. So this is then also that other exhibit that we provided in with our initial document. So, Jennifer, if you want to go ahead then.
So that,
And,
just real quick, so that says phase 1, 2, and 3. That's not what the document said in the beginning.
No, they don't.
So- so
So that correlates
the document
because
is,
the first document had Roman numerals, and this uses numbers.
This is
kind of
good.
confusing.
so, yeah, for the illustration's sake, the sections were for the actual project development.
Yeah.
The phases were just regarding the road phases. So this was kind of in phase 1 development of the roadway, phase 2, and then phase 3. We broke that down. We worked with the engineer. We worked with Banning Engineering, who really looked into detail as far as what it would cost, just to make sure that our numbers compared to what was provided by JDK Kids. So they gave their estimate of what investment they were offering to the downtown by providing this improvement. And then we did a check on that, and we broke it down in phases. And then we not only did break down with what it costs for this developer to then provide this road to be able to service this development, but then also what is this developer going above and beyond to be able to meet our request and desire for it to be a 4-lane boulevard. So that's kind of where the basis of a lot of our numbers came into play. So, but yeah, so this was a part of Resolution 1 that the RDC did approve. And again, that is just establishing that new TIF district and then that new allocation area. So if you want to go back out, and then Resolution 2, 24 RDC-2, it approves the Community Development Agreement and the Supplemental Community Development Agreement. So basically, these two exhibits, and this is just kind of the intro of that, showing where their signatures are as members of RDC, but then the exhibits are down farther. And the first exhibit, Exhibit A, it is providing the share of the TIF revenue. of over the next 25 years, what we have agreed with the developer as far as splitting of the tip revenues. So for that, Scott, again, he's going to go over this more in detail, kind of how all this works, and how it could play out in real life. But, and he's also going to show in like Scott was referencing, this is a very unique, way of doing, TIP districts now, and economic development, plans. It's, putting the risk on the developer through a developer-backed loan. So that is the process and the avenue that this developer has proposed. And he'll ultimately show also where with this agreement, starting out was a 90-10, you'll see, split on the TIF revenues, but we came to a 75-25 split. However, in reality, when you really truly look at the benefit analysis of this, it comes out to an equal share, equal benefit between the town of Pendleton and the developer. But again, we'll show you that here in some slides here in a minute. Exhibit B, it addresses the developer's commitment of providing that infrastructure improvement. So that commits him to providing that 4-lane boulevard and those utilities from end to end, from south end of that property to all the way to the north end of the property. Then we go to the timeline. I'll show you this. So if tonight, so this is kind of step 2 of this process. The first step was through the April 4th RDC. They approved that resolution 1 and 2. You have before you your own resolution. So at tonight's meeting, you are basically confirming, if you so choose and vote, confirming that this plan conforms to the planning documents of the town of Pendleton. Then from there, we would go to next week to the town council. They will have their own form of the resolution to review and to then consider for passing. And then we will also at that time, we're going to introduce the bond ordinance in those documents. Thereafter, later on the month, we will need to be issuing tax impact statements to all taxing units that could be affected by this. And just also too, just kind of keep in mind the nature of a TIF, that anything captured thereafter, once it is established, those are funds, revenues that those taxing units aren't currently receiving as well. But then if it passes then through town council, June the 6th, we will need to hold a public hearing that will go back to the redevelopment commission. They will basically confirm and approve the resolution, and this being a new tax district. And then from there, the next week at 5 o'clock, the Economic Development Commission, we need to have their approval as well. If they approve it, then it will be on the agenda then for the next hour for town council. And at town council, then they will be provided with a report and then again, that ordinance for final approval. If it is approved then at town council, then it will go into, we've got some DLGF reportings that we'll need to do, and then anticipating that bond, if you so choose to move on that, late June, probably early July, once he gets financing. So that's kind of the gist of our timeline that we're looking for. And so then I just want to kind of go over, if you want to pull up the Plan Commission resolution. This is a very short resolution. It basically references here in those first 3 paragraphs, just as far as removing that one parcel from the existing TIF, creating then the new TIF and allocation area. And then it goes then on that second page that you have received this proposal, you've reviewed it, you've analyzed it, you've compared it, you've reflected upon all of our planning documents. Those documents will include the thoroughfare plan. We do have that also in your drive that shows where that existing roadway has already been earmarked for this property. Then also we have the comprehensive plan in our economic development I guess, plans and projects. And then also our I-69 interchange master plan and how that property was envisioned to be developed. And then, of course, your zoning ordinance, which is a part of the Unified Development Ordinance. So then we would just determine if this community development agreement and associated materials are in sync. If they're in line, they complement and support and advance our planning documents. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Scott. He can give you a little bit more detail, kind of how things are works. And then afterwards, if you have any questions for us, concerns or whatnot, I'm happy to help or answer questions.
Okay, so the next part that I'm gonna go into, we're not gonna go into the depth that we do with the RDC, explaining what the agreements and the supplemental agreement is, unless you want to peel that onion. And I'm perfectly happy to do that. Because I think you're gonna start to see this type of agreements more and more when TIF's involved. So one thing, couple things, go back to the basics. So remember, we are going to, the only thing, we don't incentivize growth, we incentivize quality of place. And one of the things that's gonna happen based on our growth strategy, as people start to come into town and subdivisions get built, the population goes up and traffic becomes a real problem, especially right behind my back. So this type of economic development matches that goal in relieving traffic that is just going to keep getting worse, and that nothing affects quality of place probably more than really bad traffic and planning ahead for the increased growth of traffic. So the other thing is, let's go over basic TIF, tax increment financing. In the old days, the traditional was the town had some ground, they would designate an allocation area. And then the town would usually, if there needed to be infrastructure out there, road, water, sewer, whatever, the town would go and get a bond and build that infrastructure. And that bond would be on the town. And then as it developed around that new infrastructure, then the increase in the value of that property, which meant an increase in the property tax revenue, that revenue was committed to a bond that the town held. So the problem is that a lot of towns, especially around 2008, they were burned because they had that bond, economy crashes, nothing develops. Guess what? They're making payments on that bond. Then it would obviously be millions and millions of dollars. So we're starting to see more and more of this type of development where that risk is actually shifted to the developer. And thanks to our good counsel, when I first read this, I totally didn't understand it. In fact, I was even mad about it. Then Jeff Graham called me up, started asking me questions. He goes, "No, fool." The risk, well, he implied it. The risk of the bond is shifting from the town to the developer, and he began to explain how this works. So the way this is basically structured is that the developer is committed to building this $6 million road, which is part of the thoroughfare plan to relieve traffic in the downtown area. We designated this 3-4 years ago when I first got here through the thoroughfare plan. And basically what it does is it doesn't bypass the town, but it gives an alternative route during rush hour. And if we could go to, do we have the thoroughfare plan? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so oh, here it is. Okay, so this is the road that the developer, his part that's in his parcel is he's committed to develop. And so what he did is he came forward, we told him this was on a thoroughfare plan, that he made a proposal that he would build a 4-lane boulevard up to the end of his parcel, starting at the roundabout. So we all are orientated where we're at. And then basically in exchange for upfront building the road, $6 million, then their initial offer was they would get 90% of the TIF, right, over the 25-year. We went through a benefit analysis and
we were negotiated it back to 75-25. So going forward, they'll start building the road as the value goes up and TIF revenue comes in, then we'll split that difference. If you go to.
Can I ask something real quick?
Sure,
So-
sure.
So the 25 that we get, we're still committed to using in that property? Okay.
No, it's used, we could use it for general
Okay,
redevelopment expenses,
Okay.
right? So it's new revenue for the town.
okay,
Remember, the old traditional way, most likely all that TIF revenue would be tied up in the bond. So you would
yeah,
not see anything peeled off,
Yeah.
maybe till the end, for other things.
okay.
If you could go to, the benefit analysis. Yep. There you go. Okay, if you could go to, the first slide. So, let's just go to the third slide, cut to the chase. So we went through using different variables, but basically went down to what was the value of the road that was being built, and then the revenue that the town would be receiving and the revenue that he would receive. So basically the revenue to the town, $1.5 million over that 25 years, $6 million road, 7.2 million in benefit. And then this was at the 90-10. And then he received the cost of the road, and then the revenues he would receive. We thought that was out of whack, and then we finally settled on the 25.75, which, slide down, Jennifer. And then roughly you see the 9.3 and the 9.5 are pretty close. So that's how the 25-75 split works.
What's the 2,090,000 that? On his.
Above and beyond, for the roadway.
Yeah.
For
So-
the improvements to the roadway, the total is 6 million, but to go above and beyond what's necessary to service his parcels is 2.9. So they're 2.1.
He would have to
A
build a road.
2-lane road,
What-
basically,
Okay,
as opposed to a 4-lane, because.
Our need was a 4-lane,
Yeah.
his need was only 2-lane.
okay,
Okay.
Yep.
So good question. And I'll get into that, sort of how that works in the supplemental agreement, which deals with the impact fee. So what took an hour to explain, I tried to do in about 5 minutes. With the RDC, we did it in an hour or so. Please, if you feel like peeling the onion more, go ahead. Just know that the TIF or the
and again,
impact fee is the
that
next.
3,000,008 is, we can use any way we see fit.
Yes,
No, we're not
no, it's not tied to this
to that,
project,
okay,
right, council?
That's correct.
okay.
Anything that's a permissible use of TIF funds.
Mhm.
Different, yeah,
They'll be responsible for all the utilities, and usually, and with electric, we require that they use our forces to build it and then, build the power lines, and then we, bill back for that service. We don't let them use an outside contractor to put in our power.
Who developed the road infrastructure costs?
We had it run through Banning. Yep, it was 4 million to just put in the 2 lanes, to add two more lanes, right? Make it a boulevard was an extra 2 million.
And that's for how many linear feet of roadway?
Oh, no, 150 now.
Oh,
Probably a quarter mile.
or about a quarter mile.
Yeah. It was-
So on the
thousands
phasing
something.
of it, they're gonna do it in 3 chunks.
He could do it, or he could, most likely he'll do phase 1. And then it's a good chance he could do 2 and 3 together, or do 2 and then 3. He obviously has to do 2 before he could do 3.
But it says they're supposed to start phase 2 within 12 months of the building permits for those adjacent.
Those are
But
for-
building permits happen way after all the infrastructure. You know, it should be like 12 months within construction plan approval, not building permits. Right?
You write that down. We'll look at
Because
it.
building,
Yeah, let's look
you
at
pull a
that.
building permit after the thing's built. So, I mean, like in a subdivision,
Site work.
yeah, you build the drainage, the sewer, the pads, you get ready for building permits. Well, that road already needs to be in there before you pull a building permit, I would think. Unless building permit means building the site for those two areas. I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe that's
Well,
what
I'm
it means.
thinking
I think
if
it's to
they,
be complete.
if they do that, you know, and then they have construction on site with that shoe up the road, so that when they do it after they build the
No,
structures.
they would have to get. They'd have
Gotta
to
get the
get to
road
it.
underneath.
Right. They have to
Yeah, I
have
mean,
the
a
road.
road, but then they go like finish it, you know, like they could just put construction roads there, really, right?
That's a main thoroughfare, that's gotta be a heavy roadway cut.
Mhm.
That's
It's 100 foot right away.
You don't put your final
And
payment
yeah.
on.
depth,
Yeah.
stone and pavement's gotta be extra.
No,
heavy.
it's,
That's your typical 6-3-1.
I don't remember the street standard off the top of my.
yeah,
head.
the street
I remember
standards,
it
it
all.
talks about depth of either asphalt or sub-base,
on that road cut.
concrete. Yeah, it has to meet our street standards.
Do we have special standards for light industrial areas?
It's just the road
Probably an arterial cross
classification.
section.
Yeah.
It's just based on.
It's-
road.
it's-
think that was marked arterial.
Was it?
I don't think so.
Secondary arterial.
And
But it's
then
not
the
arterial,
develop-
just secondary.
It's a secondary arterial.
What,
So
Yeah.
within the street standards, there's not a designation between secondary and primary arterial. I'm not really sure why, but in the thoroughfare plan, there's primary, secondary, and then collector, local and private. I don't really know why it is like that. But when it mentions arterial, we're just using the arterial standards from the street standards.
I think if we were to go up the next step, it would be a heavy highway or close to it.
So
We're
I don't
not.
know if, when the thoroughfare plan was done, did you guys discuss what that difference meant? Like secondary is still a heavy arterial, it's just not used as much, or?
I didn't.
Because I only have one arterial street standard, so it's used regardless if it's a primary or secondary, as far as I can tell.
Well,
And so it's pretty heavy.
Beyond this development. If and when we can ever get the road to go the north, back north 600, it's gonna be steady traffic. 100 times improved. You don't think trucks will go through there?
No, I don't, no, our overall plan is, to
Well,
keep this, we're not gonna allow semis.
so you're saying you don't allow semis to cut through town right now?
No. It feels
Not
like
when
it.
rescue's on patrol.
I chased one down in a mower once.
He did.
That'll work out.
Huh?
He doesn't know what's
My
down.
wife stopped in the middle of the road. No, it just says in the document, phase 2 will be started within 12 months after the issuance of the building permit for phases 3 and 4,
Phases 3 and 4.
which are the two, yeah, the new
Oh,
Roman
the
numeral phases on
multifamily.
each side.
Yeah,
So if you're issuing building permits for those buildings, that means all the infrastructure is already in for the site. That road should already
Let,
be in there.
let us look at that.
what page is that on?
Yeah.
It's in under section 6, draw process. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it should say within 12 months after the issuance of the construction plan. For those two things.
We'll look at it.
So,
Believe me, it's been a sideshow watching attorneys go back and forth.
And then go ahead and update the exhibit to say phase I, and I instead of 1, 2.
Or A, B, and C. I wanted to mix it.
Yeah, that would be good.
So conceptually, I understand that this is a good hook for a developer because towns aren't really in the business of seeking developments and. So we are. But
Most towns are.
We're not in the business.
We're not,
Right.
because growth is coming to. So there's no,
it's not the
it's
days of
foolish to
old
put
Tim,
development money after.
Where you
settlement
throw up
growth.
a road and some shell buildings and hope someone.
Right.
buys
No.
Or beyond.
Yeah, you don't do that.
So I understand that hook, but the other side of the coin is if they start getting too hungry and seeking out things that aren't really in the vision. And I
Aren't
understand
in what?
our vision of that area.
just trying to get the assessed value up quickly. or
Yep,
Yes,
it's their financial incentive to do that.
exactly. So I understand that it has to meet certain standards, but if we say no legally, can they push back on us and say, hey, they're slowing us from recouping our.
Because they're
monies?
counting on this money to pay
Yeah,
the bond.
And I get that.
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
they risk and reward here,
Mhm.
but
Right,
there's also.
cost of the benefit
There's also,
analysis.
I'll use the word greed, and I know that's a
Well, the
heavy
benefit
word.
analysis doesn't reflect we didn't quantify their risk. We didn't put a dollar amount to that.
I know, but there is risk.
There is yes,
And
there
I
is
get
risk.
that,
Yeah.
which is that hook for them to develop, so something doesn't sit partially undeveloped. I get that. But then the other flip side is being too aggressive. And if we say, no, that is not what we are wanting, that. And again, it's hypothetical, I'm not sure what the no's would be, but if there are no's, from the legal standpoint, do we know how this has played out in other places?
As long as the no's reflect the ordinances and the standards that are in place and aren't arbitrary and capricious, I don't like that because it stinks. Can't say that, but
Sure.
I don't like it because it doesn't meet A, B, and C of our.
And it has to
And-
meet the standards as of the day we approve. So if we update things, it reverts back to what was.
So my fear would be, like, that's why we have the street standards. Developer comes in, there's been some terrible roads put in. Hunsinger Farms early on is a classic example. That road was well, first of all, they never finished it before they went bankruptcy, but it was too thin.
Same with the balls.
The falls, classic example there. We didn't have street standards in place back in 08, I think, when that was originally put in. Same with Hunsinger Farms. So it's been a step-by-step process. We do have a lot more. We require a wider right of way. That's in our access ordinance, right? Street standards talk about it too. Street standards talk about depth of the pavement and that sort of thing. So they're
So when we approve the parcels, I understand this isn't the days of the PUD, where what was approved 30 years ago remains an eternity.
Forever.
So then as standards change, then each section we are approving.
Would be held to those new standards. So if we amend the UDO.
Okay,
And
And not-
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we amend the UDO to where the multifamily that was approved there or the general business that's in the outlots now requires A, B, and C, when they go to plat those new sections, and then do site plans for them, they would have to meet that, whatever that new standard is. Is that correct? Or is it is it the UDO at the time of the zoning approval?
You could not make it so onerous with your changes that would completely throw the math out of whack for them on their analysis.
Okay.
And that's like I've made calculations and done work on reliance on needed remaining standards. Now you're not, the town is not stuck forever on the current one. There's changes that need to be made that are not gonna throw that. It's a balancing act.
Yeah,
It really is. You
okay.
just can't go
we
nuts.
have to
on-
have
You
justification.
can't make a standard that is so onerous that it effectively prevents the development as.
Right.
Okay,
But
I just want to be
everything is
clear on
related.
that. just
So let's,
because
I,
this is-
I think, so Hannah, why don't you talk, well, let's say, so Carney came in and it was something that is outside what's been approved. Right, for the rezoning, so,
Okay,
I don't know, let's. pick
so he
something.
wants to put a grocery store in the multifamily area?
Well,
Something
let's,
like that?
what if it's,
Well, if they can't build apartments, he wants to make that line industrial.
Well, he'd have to come back and get
Yeah,
the zoning
rezone.
map amended.
yeah,
Because what I want to make sure is that we're not kind of locking ourselves into being able to make sure that what gets built there is appropriate and meets all of
I
what
mean, it would
our
have
goals
to,
are.
yeah, it would
You-
have to.
well,
We're not,
you-
we're not
you
locking. ourselves.
rezoned it,
Correct.
do we need to go over what it
Yeah,
was rezoned to?
conditions On the rezone as well.
Yeah.
They had to have that light industrial, had to be kind of research and tech kind of related,
Yeah.
advanced
STEM.
technology.
Something about
STEM.
lights.
Yes,
Yeah.
the apartments had to meet a certain
Yeah.
standard market, market rate. So there were conditions that they would have to adhere to, and then in this
And-
development,
and
it's
they
not
know
a
that.
primary plat process.
They know that, so
goes
they're
through-
still calculating their benefit then based on knowing what the
Right.
restrictions are.
And they
It's like
also
reading.
actually, to that point, I mean, they have to primary plat each
Mhm.
chunk.
Mhm.
You know, just like they did with the southwest or southeast corner of it, they're going, our UDO allows, a different way to do commercial subdivisions as opposed to residential, so that way you can have
Mhm.
end user flexibility.
Mhm.
So when we platted that small section of just 2 parcels, they have to continue doing that for each chunk that they develop. So that's also something where in that platting phase, again, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, you could put some reasonable conditions upon that plat. Just like you could have done that tonight if there was something we missed
Mhm.
that you wanted them to do.
Mhm.
And the standards at the time that primary plat was approved, that's what will apply then through the duration of the build out of that primary.
Yeah.
For the
So-
primary plat. Okay.
So we are doing this, the catalyst is really because of the cost of this double lane and boulevard build out, but it's only half of a road because it stops at
Yes.
the north.
So,
So then really, the rest of the parcels in the future, one day if
Could
they
you scroll
sell,
to that one aerial photo?
we will have to treat those
Number
similarly.
one.
Yes, you will.
Number one.
So nothing less than this.
Number one.
I would think so,
Second.
yeah.
This is the new
Second
standard.
map.
So,
Yeah.
It
okay,
is.
Yeah.
so,
And I want, so that,
We're setting
that,
precedent.
that's the parcel north, plus it's then across.
Yep.
132.
Well, no, those aren't in a TIF district, the ones above.
well, these will be
Just two
residential
one.
most likely, right?
Yeah, so
But
that
we
connection
will-
was 600.
Just 132.
So,
The boulevard is beyond old 132, or does
No,
then it?
the classification changes at
I
one
think it
thirty-two.
does.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
so,
get hot back to
yeah.
yeah,
the road.
I think it's.
But to get to 132, they're gonna have to
There's
be.
one more parcel.
there's-
so let's talk through that scenario, because that's
And
most
it's
like,
a TIF.
It is.
yes, it is in a tip. So, let's just say nothing ever develops. Carrot Glen is the last development for a long time, and this road does get built. It's servicing what he's developing, so no harm, no foul, right?
Yeah.
But eventually, this is gonna develop. You know, the price per acre is just gonna get too tempting. And if it's not this generation, it'll be the next generation of the farmer that wants to sell. But anyway, so that road would then continue and then up here. But let's just say this starts to develop and this, they don't want it, they want to keep holding it as farm ground. Then the worst case scenario is that you'd probably be forced into eminent domain, but the buildup would have to be so great. Till that last.
And there
The
is,
last scenario, the worst case scenario would happen.
the area west of Carrot Glen probably is the most likely
Yes,
at this point.
right.
Good drainage there.
So what about the areas outside of our jurisdiction though? If development occurs in the county areas or in the Anderson?
Yeah,
area?
so that's one of the problems you have is that if areas outside the town develop really fast, which probably will happen, because developers will go, they don't have impact fees out in the county. They have lower, not building standards, but lower standards with street, with monotony, all sorts of things. So they're pretty upfront. They'll say they'll look for to develop just outside of town. So one of the problems we do have is even if we did grow one more person, all the growth that happens around town or whatever, let's just say you could, it was constitutional, we could say no more people in Pendleton. You're still gonna have growth outside of it. We're still gonna have traffic problems that is caused by not us.
Well, we have amenities here like the park and the
Yep,
pool
yeah,
and
yep.
the school.
Right,
Will never change.
right.
So
So,
you're gonna talk about how impact fees play into this?
yes, so supplement agreement number 2. Well, are we ready to leave this? So everybody feels comfortable why this is a long-range plan and this is actually happening sooner than I thought. I thought it'd be another couple of years, but if you don't do it now, it's too late because you don't want to be building roads if you have to tear down houses or buildings, commercial buildings, whatever, because then you're buying the building too, right? Okay, so where was that? You ready to go to the impact fee? Okay, so supplement number 2 was necessary because when this road, because the town needs it to go to 4 lanes, that kicks in part of the impact fee state law as far as how to handle that. So as this develops, there's gonna be quite an amount of impact fee. Do you remember what the estimated?
2.5.
No, the total impact fee that would be generated if all this was developed. Do you remember what that number was? It was more than 2.5. Here's
Might have
the
been
1 part.
3.5. I bet there was 2.5 from the multi-family.
Yes.
220 from all the general business, and then there might have been might have been another million.
Okay,
So that's 3.5.
we're close enough, right? I think it was my memory, 1.5.
Yeah, okay. I trust.
So anyway, so the town was requiring the extra 2 lanes, which was valued at $2 million. So based on the state's impact fee law, then we would have to give him credit for that construction. So as he starts to build, then he's gonna have to pay impact fees or his the people, the third party, the people he sells to, if they develop, there's gonna be impact fees generated. And so the second agreement talks about how he can earn that credit for the 2 million. Or how he generates the 2 million from the road. And then most likely he will do the development, some of the development himself and not pass it off to a third party developer because that way he can recoup that impact fee. So let's say he's building the townhouses. That'll generate, like Denise said, 2.5 million. Well, he can use that 2 million that you credit for that road back towards the 2.5 that he's gonna own.
But haven't you already input the $2 million of incremental cost into the calculations here?
You'll only be eligible for.
That's why you
up to
saw
the
a
2
minus.
million, up to the 2 million that he invests above and beyond.
Cause he was gonna spend
Uh,
4 to build his own road. The
Yeah,
town wants a $6 million road. So
Right.
the $2 million extra.
he gets the
credit.
$2 million
And so
credit.
it's-
But if he never develops, then he can't use that credit.
Basically, he's putting the road in, not getting any credit.
If he doesn't put the road in, he doesn't get any credit. But
Kind of a safety net.
Yeah, it's-
To
Because he
ensure
can build,
that
yeah,
we
he
get
could
the
build the
road.
phase 1 and then abandon the project and the town still gets the road with no bond.
yep, that's exactly right.
But there's no guarantee the road extends all the way to the end of the property. It could be
The
stuck
next
just
guy
at
may have to do it.
phase 1.
Next guy.
Yeah, the next guy would be stuck with it. And he only earns that credit too as he builds the road. If he breaks it into 3 pieces, then he only earns that credit as he builds. It's not like we're.
So the credit is prorated based upon the
What
actual
gets his
percentage of the
action,
road
yeah, until
constructed.
he doesn't get any of the credit till the road's complete.
So if something does happen and he goes under for some reason and
Right.
someone else
Yeah.
comes in, do we start a completely new agreement with them then?
Yeah, so somebody will end up owning the property. And so the safety net is whatever he built, it's to the town. So if he gets into some sort of financial trouble, which is really the first questions I start to ask, is how does this work if he gets into financial trouble?
Mhm.
And basically, that we get the road, whatever he's
We
built.
get the road,
We
but
get
then
the road.
anyone else, do they get the agreement? If somebody,
Like
Like
if someone
some-
Yeah,
purchases
so-
bankruptcy.
Yeah, So Jeff, you'll have to ask me, answer this because we used, Tom Pittman to answer it last time, but I remember when that question came up, yes, it would transfer. If he sold, it would
It would
transfer.
transfer to the,
Yeah.
But you don't require the plat to be recorded prior to construction, right? So if he builds the road, goes belly up and the plat never gets recorded and the right of way is never dedicated, then it's a roadway on somebody's private property,
We'd have to
right?
plat it in phases where.
I mean, you would plat it, but you typically don't record the plat until after you build, unless you're gonna post performance bonds for everything. So he could build this roadway, go under, plat never gets recorded.
But-
And then the
Let's-
town
I mean,
doesn't.
You know what? That's-
But those go
I'm
to
gonna-
secondary, so they do get recorded.
Yeah, but like, usually after the infrastructure's installed.
Well, there's.
He's not gonna get, well, he's not gonna
There's
get
two ways they can do that.
impact fee credit until he dedicates that road.
Well, I'm just saying, like, during the process of construction, say he finishes the road and then goes bankrupt before he gets anything else built.
Would we bond it just like we do in residential?
That's a bond attorney a question. That's a really, really.
I just want to make sure there's a mechanism for the
Yeah.
constructed road to transfer
Right.
to the town in the event of some unforeseen circumstance.
Same as,
Well, he doesn't, well, so he does, if the road's not turned over, he doesn't get any of the TIF. None of that, all that stuff is have to happen.
Okay.
So the road has to be built, it has to be our road before he gets the TIF. All right, and then also with the impact fee. The
But he'll be
impact
getting-
fee credit.
He'll be getting TIF with every segment of the road he builds, correct?
No, he gets, it's real easy. As the TIF revenue starts to roll in, right? And the road is built and it's turned over to us, then he gets that amount, but it can't, I remember this part, it can't exceed no more than, let's just say he built a short segment. The amount of TIF revenue that he gets is not more than what's been, it would be all be prorated.
Impact fee credit.
So it would
The
be
impact-
prorated based upon the phase one section that he built, if he just built out phase one.
Yeah, so if he builds phase one, the road's in place, it's dedicated, and he's starting to develop that ground, which is gonna happen real quick with the outlots, right? Then the TIF revenue will start to roll in. And then he will capture 75% of that.
Yes. But his credit for the
Yes.
roadway will only take place subject to the receipt of the impact fee.
Yeah, that also is prorated.
So that will have to take place then.
The key concept is that the town is at no risk.
Mhm.
Right? If he totally fails, this doesn't go through, then, whoever ends up owning the land, the bank or whatever.
Well, they're not gonna take the road. Roads will stay there.
Yeah, the road's gonna stay there. It's not gonna be rolled up and shipped to another location, so.
And Kyle, like, to your question, just like those two parcels that have already been parceled out, he is parceling and dividing those, outside of that intended roadway system. So if you look up at the first one there, you'll see those two parcels. If you want to scroll up, Jennifer, up to the first.
So these two parcels.
Yeah, so that's the roadway there that is in the center of those two general business parcels. Those have already been separated out and parceled out to the county. So he'll continue to do that as he develops and sells the lots. And then as he does that, then he's gonna designate where that placement of that roadway is and then provides that roadway width and right-of-way dedication.
Yeah, side roads
Yeah.
like this right here are not part of what we're talking about. He's gonna build those so that he can sell to third-party developers or develop the townhouses.
It's just the boulevard.
It's just the bowl.
It'll make that third developer.
Now.
What's that?
It'll make that second or third developer. Whoever puts in the gas station,
Yeah,
Starbucks, or whatever.
Yeah,
And we can have a little say on that boulevard. I know in our plans, the thoroughfare plan, we had some illustrations where it's tree lined
Yep.
in the center. some
it has to
things
be
that bring that-
those standards are in place. We already know what the boulevard's gonna look like.
Okay,
in general,
So-
right? We know
So
what
we
the
have control on.
Yes.
standard cross section will look
Okay.
like that. It'll have, it'll have to have a trail,
Trail on one side.
sidewalk on the other.
With, I think it might be a 9-foot tree lawn, just about with native trees. It doesn't say however many per so many feet. We don't have any standard like that, but you know.
So that's already said, how thick the pavement's gonna be, all that set by a standard.
And I know it doesn't necessarily pertain to this or this decision, but we don't have. The town itself doesn't really have many 2-lane or 4-lane roads. So it's something well down the road in the future to plan, because when you're getting money to pave, it's that calculation is only for 2 lanes and not 4. That's where bigger cities get in trouble. Or just fall short of being able to keep up on roads, because that
Yeah.
the state's formula is only allocated.
So you do bring up a point, South Heritage Way, if you wanna know what North Heritage Way is gonna look like, just, it already exists. So if you wanna know what it's gonna look like, all you gotta do is go an extra 180 degrees around the roundabout.
Except that side's missing.
Then have the-
But it's missing
and-
sidewalks.
Yeah, then have
Yep.
the sidewalk,
But as we increase
yeah.
And
a
as
4-lane
that-
road, it is very pertinent to understand the upkeep, just because of the state's formula, unless state decides to change it.
I mean, we put that on a CCMG rotation, I'm sure, you know,
Or paving cycle.
paving cycle, yeah.
Just a quick question. Who executed for the town? It says there's a name I can't read for Marissa.
That looks like Scott's signature.
I didn't say.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
You signed it?
Yeah.
Who was your elementary school teacher? This Friday is
Lenny Gray.
pathetic.
That signature, you ought to see the one where I definitely don't want to get for.
Don't try, don't try.
Yeah, you can't forge my signature. Believe me, I was an admin officer in the Marine Corps, and the troops said that was the first signature they could never
And that's
forge.
not 4 lanes. And it doesn't.
That's
Done a pretty good job.
That's my cleaned up one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kyle, I kind of wanted to touch base with what you had said about it, because I want to make sure I understand it with our process, but if you're saying if they plat it and then don't build the road, there was a concern there of having.
Well, I guess, Scott, my thought was, well, if they build the road and never dedicate it, then the town doesn't own the road. But since the town's not really out anything, it could
Right.
just be a road on a private property until such
Right.
time that it develops. I
Right,
guess
so we wouldn't be.
there's still no
responsible
risks.
For maintaining it or anything
No.
like that.
The only risk would be if the property north of there develops and we put in that segment, you would no longer have the connector from
Yeah.
132 down.
You would be
Yeah.
motivated, if you're the owner, you'd be motivated to turn that over, because then you don't have to do maintenance. Yeah, nobody wants, developers don't wanna.
Private road.
So South
Yeah.
Heritage Way isn't 4 lanes and it isn't a boulevard.
There's cross sections of it that are.
Well, yeah, but
It's
if you
wide
look
enough
south
for-
of the school admin area, it's not a
Yeah,
boulevard.
yeah.
But this will be all 4-lane boulevard.
I think even at South Heritage Way, anything develops south of that, the town owns. We would probably, where it stops being 4-lane, start there and turn it into one, add the lane, I guess, and then where it's South Heritage is stubbed right now, depending on how that develops, put in same as this, a 4-lane to match it. Because the issue is usually if we don't have something like this, like he said, they're only gonna put in what they need to serve them, but they'll still dedicate the right of way to us, but they'll only be obliged to put in 2 lanes with the center, space. And then, 10 years from now, we go back in and add the secondary lanes on either side. So
I would imagine once we get further into detail with the road, that there may be required turn lanes, but it's gonna be, it's 4 lanes wide right here at South Heritage. And then, yes, the through lanes, it goes single, but then there's some turn lanes, if I remember right. But I know right up here to the north part, it's definitely wide enough.
Nobody named that road yet.
No, we just call it North Heritage Way.
I just had some ideas. man, I throw out.
Pritchard Way.
No, I would.
Pritchard Parkway?
So Pritchard Parkway, oh my God, it rhymes.
We do not have a
Just
walk,
thinking.
we don't have a Walker Drive.
We have a J.
We need to tap into our history.
We have a Walker Drive.
All right, well.
Do we?
A question I have is,
Richard Parker.
taking a look at the 67th Street extension, if that
On the other
ever
side.
were to occur
Yeah,
and it intersects 132, that would provide an access point for heavy commercial truck traffic down 132. We are going to prevent that from,
yeah, so, I
Crossing
mean, we're in
in
charge of our
jurisdiction.
destiny. If you don't want semis in there, you don't have to have semis.
Put those bars over them.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna start doing. That and big rocks on the corners.
They won't keep trucks off this parcel. They go light industrial back, there's no big trucks.
Yeah,
Right, but they
My-
would hopefully
But
use
you-
the highway interchange.
Yeah.
my concern would be 67th Street coming down, connecting to 132 down to then have a right-hand turn onto 38 to access the interstate.
If 67th happens, we're still crossing with guide.
I mean,
if it's in the incorporated town, then you don't have to allow semis. Or
Right, so
you,
that
or you
connection
don't
would-
have to connect to the Anderson part either.
sure, we don't have to,
All
but
that, for the congressional funding on that, for the design, all they have to do is build 1,000 feet, they meet their obligation. And Anderson's gonna do that in their section. So we have a ton of flexibility.
So that part that they've already dedicated is 100 feet wide?
Mhm.
yeah, above the stub,
Gee, did the MCOG technician did put that right?
what's it measuring at?
60?
96 maybe, I don't know. It's wider at the roundabout down there.
It is wider at the roundabout, I think that's like 150, but that's a roundabout, I don't know why it's so big, but.
Google Maps is all.
Oh, are you talking about South Heritage Way?
North Heritage.
No, the stub on the roundabout's about 150-ish feet, but we only require 100-foot right away for a 4-lane road. So when that roundabout went in, he must have, we paid him for right of way that was a lot bigger. My guess is that the roundabout itself needs more right of way. Maybe
Yeah, the right of way in
expand.
this corner is screwed up. We discovered that during our due process and due diligence,
Yeah,
that something's not right here.
well, that's the only leg that's not 2 lanes, so it is really weird.
Yeah, this roundabout will end up being bigger. It was built too small.
The teardrops need to become round drops.
Yeah,
Well, get in line.
Almost got, almost got hit this morning.
Yeah,
Someone coming from, um, the west side, but it was on the east side teardrop. They don't realize they have to yield because it converges too
Yeah.
much and they just. Almost got hit this morning.
you know, I understand. I know. So, I mean, keep tearing this apart, because believe me, we're very nervous about doing this, because this is the first time we've done it. And
But have we studied how other towns have done it?
so
what issues
Reedy
they've had.
has, right? A lot of them are just doing the 90-10, and I don't think they did the due diligence that we did. We did the benefit analysis. I mean, that was town staff's idea. That wasn't,
Have these, the ones that have been studied, are they fully developed? Like, do we have an understanding of how their phases went and, you know, just any issues? You're new.
yeah, it's a new concept.
did Reedy have any comments?
They've
This
been doing
analysis?
these for a couple of years now, so. And the other thing is typical Indiana, we're not the first state to be doing it.
Sure.
So, in other,
We are
most states have
incentivizing
some sort of
growth.
equivalent to a tip, and it's,
So this plan commission PC1 is what we're reviewing tonight.
Is it one document?
Just one
One document.
They're asking-
Both.
The top of the page of, page 2 of that resolution kind of outlines, you know, what your acknowledgements are. That it conforms to the planning documents of the town. It just kind of states as far as next steps, the reporting.
I want to favorable
filing.
recommendations by us to pass on to town council.
And the only reason
You
it's,
would adopt this as your own resolution. And you've already hinted at it some, but this doesn't take any of your arrows out of your quiver on planning. Everything, this is not a commitment to anything with regard to that.
We still have a whole UDO to follow.
Yep.
it's another way to describe it, Jeff, it's not so much that it's in general, we have to do this because we're breaking out the parcel, right?
Well-
To its own allocation area.
Correct. Any tip area requires the 4 steps. As Denise ought to teach a seminar. Because
Right.
I've done seminars at Warner School, so as she suggested that. But yeah, but every tip has to go.
Right, so that's the way to think about it.
Right.
You could do this without worrying about the guts of the economic development agreement. In fact, I think we call it community development agreement, not economic development.
We're establishing it as. an
I'm breaking my
economic
own rule. What's
area.
it?
We're
Yeah.
establishing it as an economic development
Right.
area, but yet it is an agreement, a community development.
Right. This agreement makes it necessary that we make it its own allocation area, because it wouldn't make sense not to.
Which,
And the reason there's 2 documents
okay.
is just for the ease of separating out the community development agreement part, and how it works with TIP, then separating out how it works with impact fees.
And just to be clear again, that with impact fees, we have 2, so it doesn't. It's just the road impact fees, when you
Yes.
say that.
Oh.
The part,
We say it
Right, they'll-
generically speaking, but
Yes.
people need to remember that that's 2 separate.
Yeah.
right,
And that's only for residential too. It's not for commercial or industrial.
I just don't want those conflated over time because
Yeah.
they are 2 separate entities.
But it would apply to the multifamily, correct?
Correct.
So this proposed 24 PC-1 Exhibit A says C map attached, and there's no map. So this Serenity allocation area. So that page, when you go to that Exhibit A, on attachment 5, or number 5, file number 5. No, the file number 5.
Okay.
Page 3, exhibit A.
Yeah, go to Exhibit A.
There's no
So
map.
what
So
does,
this Serenity allocation area, those 2 removed, or those 2 expansion parcels are the 2 parcels up front,
the 2 outlots.
Mhm.
and then the removed parcel is the JDK kids.
And it's removed from the original, declaratory resolution that established the economic development, TIP district number 1.
But this makes it sound like they're removed from, oh, okay, so the Serenity allocation is the removed parcel that was removed from TIP 1
Yes.
and those 2 additional. That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
so what does Serenity allocation area mean?
Serenity is just a name for it.
It's their
It's
CDA.
there.
They could have called it JD Kids. Okay, it's,
Okay.
they just called it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could have said, you know, it should be else.
I was thinking
Arabian, whatever, or we could have named it.
All right.
Glenn, you have any questions or comments? Yeah, so we're.
You said, yeah, you sat through this whole thing.
Found it interesting, especially about the round valve. I'm not a fan of round valves, but they needed to be bigger.
They work. They work.
I'd love them if they're done right.
Everything you have in your car just goes flying around.
Well, that's the teardrop, because you're like, that extra little, I love driving them in Europe on the wrong side.
What do you think of the, Kyle, the mini roundabouts where it's basically not even a roundabout, it's sort of like a big post that you sort of
Usually
avoid.
it's smooth enough, you can just like drive right over.
Yeah,
it.
if you, yeah, I shouldn't say, they don't work very well. It's not a barricade, but
So I say, well, then,
So do we need a motion?
we need a motion to approve 24 PC one as described here tonight. Vote on it. And then it will go to the town council, correct? That's right. And remember, it's just this resolution for the TIF.
Yeah.
We still have full authority of the UDO to enforce any changes. Come,
Yeah, all we're saying is that the RDC resolution conforms to the plan,
correct,
that's all.
just the TIF issue. It's just a TIF review.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 24 PC. One.
Second.
Thank you, Carol. I have a motion and a second for 24 PC one. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
now I just want to make sure. So the one question that we need to check with the bond attorney was,
Is timing the road and the permit.
Building permit.
And I'll pass that map to that resolution.
All right, so we need to go back to old business and the start of the meeting, which is on.
Approve the minutes.
Oh, minutes.
Meeting. Could have a few folks review the minutes submitted. Motion, accept those, please, or changes.
Motion to approve.
A motion, thank you,
Second.
Kyle, have a second, all is well. All those in favor of the minutes as submitted, please say aye. Those opposed, thank you. Hannah, old business, UDO.
Okay. So if you will go to May amendments, Excel sheet, please. It should,
Oh,
it'll
it'll
be
be outside. right?
yes, hit 5 May
Ha, look at that, come right up.
and then May 20. Perfect. Okay, so we had talked about mechanical equipment landscaping last time. You wanted me to talk to the utilities office, electric and water, so I did do that. The way we have it written right now is that developers and builders should avoid putting pad mount boxes in the front yards, but when unavoidable to do this as far as landscaping goes. So you can see it stated there, it's 15-foot radius, shrubs, trees, etc. And then a screening of masonry around the pad mount box. So in talking to Craig, these are his comments. He says that the electric boxes in the front yard are actually way more practical because he has a lot of issues with the ones that are. Right of entry is something you have to deal with, and then fencing can sometimes occur around it or in an unsafe way. Sometimes people just put those up without asking, and that's just what happens. He's fine with the wall of some sort, whatever material, on 3 sides. He's okay with the removable 4th wall as long as he can get to it. Does not want trees and decorative shrubs and grasses, just enough to obscure the box so long as they can get to it. So that was kind of his comments. I have 2 other comments here about should we allow a different material other than masonry? So, you know, wood, vinyl, metal, you know, anything like that, just make sure it's opaque. You know, can't really see through it or nearly 100% opaque. I think Carol, you had sent me a picture of one that's like slats, where it is still sort of see-through, but you know, it's a nice decorative covering. So that was one thing with the room, both fourth walls if they want to, and then the landscaping radius, I would suggest just removing that entirely. It's really big and it's not gonna be practical. But to just go with Craig's comments that there needs to be enough plantings to obscure it. It could be hedges, it could be grass, it could be something like that, but not trees. So what are your thoughts on that? I'd kind of like to amend it to these 3 comments here.
And Craig, Last name, please.
Switzer.
Switzer, he's electrical.
So Craig Switzer, and his title and position in town is.
Electric super.
So when you say other material other than masonry, so are we gonna like another approved material in the UDO?
I mean, I think that we
Use
could just put
cardboard or-
a wall.
I mean,
We could say an opaque or nearly opaque wall on 3 sides and it excluding, certain materials you might not want, like cardboard. Or something like that. Or you could say it should be masonry block, it could be wood, vinyl, metal, kind of give them the options.
Cause we already have a table in there of approved facade materials, right?
True, yeah.
You just refer to that.
I don't know if that's really relevant to fencing material. I mean, if it was a nice metal or wood.
That's true.
I don't know if that's really listed in there. I know wood siding is not in that table.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to open it up to all these different materials?
I mean, masonry can be a little impractical, don't you think?
I can't imagine building a wall around the electrical transformer box in the front of all these yards.
Right.
You're gonna have 150 sheds that carry clean in those front yards versus a 2.5 foot tall green box.
And can you just exclude residential districts? Then?
That'd be
I
the
mean,
best.
cause that doesn't make sense to.
You can't build a box. you
Really,
can't
even,
build a
even if
wall.
you just leave the
Excuse me.
pad, I'm sorry.
You can't build a wall around that box, set it up front yard. That's gonna look hideous. Of any material, wood, masonry, fence, anything.
Most put just
They just
decorative
plant
grasses.
Yeah, I looked around a lot of ones that are in yards and it's mostly just shrubberies and things like that, so. And I haven't found any, where kind of around where the pad mount box is in the backyard. I know Craig has mentioned that,
Older subdivision.
that's a
Yeah,
thing.
I have them.
But
Half my neighborhood has them in the back
has them in the
and
back.
we don't have an alley.
Yeah,
So it's the right of way in between the 2 homes.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
over the years, some people have put fences to where then if the other person doesn't have a fence, they usually
Right.
don't because they try to leave right away that a vehicle can get back there.
So that's why Craig had suggested, I don't really think the ground level mechanical equipment in the front yard should be discouraged. I mean, this doesn't say it shall be in
easy-
the
It's
backyard,
easy access for issues.
in the front.
Yes.
Yeah, so my suggestion would be to eliminate that first sentence and just have, the pad mount boxes need to have shrubberies around them in residential areas and need to be safely accessible. And in commercial areas, because this is for all zoning districts.
In
right now.
commercial areas, front yard would be discouraged, right?
I mean, we can
Right.
break it up as far as zoning codes go.
Or in industrial, commercial,
Tim, though, I don't even think in the residential we should require it.
anything.
I think we should require some shrubs. I think it should be to obscure it. I think that would be fine.
But if you drive around and like even over by Geist, there was a nice addition and they were just in the front yard.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean-
there's a mix.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any with fences, though. I
No,
know that.
But I do think if we
it almost.
encourages some plantings, then it's already there. So then it really deters the homeowner from planting things that,
And maintaining.
or planting things that are more invasive or that shouldn't
Yeah.
be planted there, because most of them aren't gonna look in a 350-page document.
No,
So if it's already landscaped and planted, usually they just leave it, because they got other things they wanna
Right.
decorate, spend their money on in their home. So I do feel like
Plantings.
having some plantings deters from things we don't want getting planted there.
Sure.
And if they plant things, they're never gonna turn or take care of them. Our guys not gonna sort of fight to get to the box.
Mhm.
It's a
Especially-
double-edged sword.
Especially
Last
for
thing
us,
they wanna do is have to fight to get to that box.
and then the
Plant a
homeowner's
2 foot
mad.
bush, now this bush now as big as your car.
That's a good point.
Well,
They've never complained. We tear the bush out, we're gonna get a 911 call, hate call to the front office. You just tore my bush out.
So what it's telling me is I think a lot of times we take the path of least resistance when it comes to making utility decisions. What's the easiest and quickest way to do things? I've seen that with some of the road improvement projects and pole placements, et cetera. It sounds to me like if we really want to preserve the integrity of these neighborhoods, we should look at moving utilities to a right of way accessible to the rear of the properties. That gives you the best visual impact from the front of the houses. And we have not dedicated any right of way really on the back sides of these properties.
It eliminates
You can't get
using your
service there.
backyard.
And
Yeah,
putting
you
it
got
back.
fences and you've got.
You can never have a pool, you can never do
Yeah.
a lot of things.
Right,
When we brought this
because,
up last time, weren't we talking about other non-utility mechanical boxes like pool equipment and that sort of thing? Is what we're mostly
Air
concerned,
conditioning.
not just.
that was just brought up while we were
Okay,
talking about
well,
this, but the main focus.
So
was
can we
the-
just-
Green boxes, I don't think are horrible to look at. We've got green boxes in the front of every
They're
other
everywhere.
house in my
They're
neighborhood.
everywhere.
And I would almost rather look at the green box than the random overgrown yew that somebody planted in front of the green box. What I thought, I guess, if my memory serves, that we were mostly concerned, we're thinking along the lines of accessory mechanical things such as pool equipment, air conditioner,
Yeah.
like supplemental air conditioning units, like that sort of thing. And obscuring those from the front of the.
So
of
Yeah,
the-
those are usually.
That was,
just
on
put
the
a public
side.
utility exclusion in there. Would that cover it? Pedestals and
I
transit.
mean, we could,
I just feel like people, I want those boxes to have access to when we need to have access to them. And not have to trample down somebody's mandatory ornamental grasses that were planted. That now are all laying over, it's the end of the season, they're gonna lay like that until May, or then until spring cuts.
Most subdivisions as well are sloped to the rear, particularly with homes back to back.
Mm.
That's sloped to the rear of that property is used for surface radius.
right.
You don't want your utility box out of the water.
So to your point about the side, equipment, that was brought up last time, for sure. But that wasn't addressed in this UDO amendment because this doesn't talk about the side of the house. It's only things in front of the face.
Okay.
So, but it was brought up that that might be something we want to do. I looked at a lot of neighborhoods too with that. And mostly what I see is there is some fencing for stuff like that, and some shrubberies, but I think that also can kind of get that way too. If you need to have a mechanic fix an air con unit, you don't want a big hedge by it, unless you just do that yourself, but to have it planted that way when you purchase the house or something like that might not be.
It is an issue, if I could. You were right with the green boxes. Craig emphasized this a lot. He doesn't like people planting in front of them because then they get upset when he has to access it.
Yeah.
It gets damaged. The other thing is, just for safety, inevitably, somebody's just gonna go out there, start driving a fence post in, put up some sort of wall. Next thing you know, they're driving through that 208, 120 or 220 floor.
Yeah.
So we.
I think that there's also an issue, like making the distinction between utilities versus accessory, like air conditioner units or
Right.
whatever, like. I think that the utmost importance is the safety of our staff that has to go out and maintain town-owned utility equipment. And it is nice in some regard to have all of that in the front yard when possible, so that they're not traipsing through everybody's property to
Yeah.
get to the rear, and then fighting an arborvitae or like the one that's by my, and I'll speak to it myself, is that we've got this vining ivy stuff that covers that box. Anytime Craig has to touch it, I'm like, oh, here we go. Get off the shears, Craig.
Yeah, gotta start over.
So, and if you read this amendment, it says, ground level mechanical equipment in the front yard. So front yard locations for mechanical equipment and air con compressors. So like, I've never seen an air con compressor in a front yard. Except maybe if it's a Scott Rescue house or, multifamily, like in some cases, you'll see those units in the front because there's front units and back units, like the ones out at Hamilton Station are
But
actually
it's in
like that.
close proximity to the front wall. I think there's a
Correct.
big difference between that and the green box that's out at the curb.
Right.
But
But-
the green box qualifies mechanical and air conditioning compressors?
That's
Well,
what I'm trying
It's
to.
not even,
Yeah,
it's
mechanical.
not,
You need to have
it's not
verbiage in
mechanical
there.
equipment.
Need to have verbiage where it says any accessory mechanical component, such as a pool pump.
Air
Okay.
conditioner.
air
But I think you need to
conditioner.
make it clear that this is not applied.
Right, that's,
Either
what-
water
that's,
meter
okay,
pit,
that's the delineation.
gas,
Yeah.
Telephone postal.
yeah,
none of that
Okay.
counts.
so, yeah, utility, public utility.
Exempt.
Okay, so as far as that goes, then, that seems like it's much less of an issue where, I mean, I've never seen that stuff really in the front yard, especially not in our new subdivisions going in. I mean, none of that stuff's in the front. So, so I guess, is there anything I need to change in here besides just saying public utilities are exempt? Because if we do have someone who puts in, you know, an aircon unit in the front yard, they have to do all this stuff then.
The 15 feet seems like
We're gonna do,
too much.
yeah, but we're changing that to enough to obscure, right?
We
We're
can't,
eliminating the 15 foot and just saying enough
To-
vegetation to
enough
obscure.
to
the view.
obscure.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
like use words like in an unlikely event that?
Well, it says ground
Because that
level
would
mechanical
really
equipment is
deter that.
discouraged, so
Okay.
it says in the event of unavoidable.
Okay.
So this is like a worst case scenario, but I know it's gonna come up one of these days, so that's why I wanna make sure we have something together for it.
Well, I hate to say this, but can we look at the language one more time?
Sure.
I mean, if you could rewrite it, just let us look at it again one more.
Yeah, I can do
just-
that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in a
fine.
hurry. It's
Yeah,
not like
this
we
is
have
not a
people
hot
lining up.
issue where this is
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
affect something tomorrow, so I can do that. Okay. So, ownership and maintenance of open space, if you guys wanna look at that document, in your G drive, it says ownership and maintenance space, there's a highlighted section. On page 157, so we've discussed some things we might want to put in, might not want to put in. Is this sufficient as far as maintenance plan and lifestyle or like life cycle cost analysis, maintenance bond for basic maintenance of storm features, things like that. I don't know if you had any more thoughts on that. What we have right now is that highlighted section that you see on that page of the UDO. But I did want to note that it does say the jurisdiction shall not assume responsibility for maintenance and safety of common areas. That's on the HOA or the private property owner if there is no HOA. Or it dissolves. I mean, we require an HOA when they do a subdivision, but they can dissolve it if they want to. So
Or,
it then goes on each private property.
Do we make HOAs plow snow or do we do that?
Make them what?
Plow the streets?
It's up to them. We have scenarios where.
But if they're turned over to us, we
we
can.
do.
But if they say, don't plow our streets, we won't.
Gotcha.
The only
But
way to see that, it was part of, Kendall Point, when they had people plowing their driveways, they wanted the street be plowed. That was the only street, to my knowledge, within an HOA,
Right, that's.
within our jurisdiction that we did not plow.
Right.
And we started plowing it this year at their discretion, correct?
so
There's been wilder,
Must have looked.
there's been some wilder or scenarios. But thank God those are been.
So this is really for future properties because
Yes.
some of the neighborhoods don't have HOAs and then the parcels, each individual who are on that retention pond own,
Yes.
and then there's just that easement, right? And we do have some of those around.
Yeah, so this is just for new stuff.
Okay.
So let me ask the scenario, there are 200 properties being platted west of town. There are 2 ponds. In the event that there is no HOA and the pond maintenance comes up, as I'm reading this, all 200 property owners would have responsibility potentially for maintaining those ponds
I don't know if it'll be the 200 or only the properties that touch it.
Would be
equally among all property
It'd be
owners
common.
within the development, either jointly.
Oh. Then yes, they would.
And they all benefit from the drain.
Oh, that's all.
So you would just.
So how do you enforce that?
I guess the town would go do it or lean on all those properties?
Yep.
or-
No. I think that it would be on the county to do it, because this says that the town does not, jurisdiction shall not assume responsibility for maintenance and safety of common areas.
So go over your scenario again.
Baker's Point.
Newly platted Baker's Point, there are 2 ponds on the property. In the event that there is no HOA, there are 200 lots, 11 and 189, that are a part of that development. As it reads now, responsibility, maintenance, and ownership of ponds and common areas shall be distributed equally among all property owners within the development, either jointly through a property owners association, assume it's been dissolved, or individually in the event of a property owners association is dissolved or does not exist.
Okay.
Now,
Who's it deeded to? Be the question. It's a common area, have to be deeded to somebody.
Would that be what the HOA would discuss it as they dissolve?
Right, well, that, they have to figure
Part
out
of
where
the
that's
deed.
gonna go.
1/200th to each lot owner? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
out.
in
And
practicality,
out the tr-
so in practicality, the way the scenario would play out is, let's say it starts to be an issue like near a Gear House.
yeah, which is
What-
semi done
Yeah,
with.
so, so those property owners are not maintaining it. We would force the issue and probably to get them to fix it because it's becoming a public nuisance. Then we would probably assess them.
Could also use unsafe building law.
Yeah, but I'm saying we would probably through utility or something, bill them for the cost, the 200, 0.005% of whatever the cost is that needs to be expended to maintain that.
And couldn't also.
So the jurisdiction in that case would be assuming
We
responsibility.
would be, I
for
think
the
what
They have the
it
ability to
needs to say is
enforce.
the town is not gonna pay for that. They're gonna pay for it, but what I'm saying is in practicality, the town will force the issue. Because
We
you
have to
start to
step
have
in and make them
stink,
do it.
you start to have rodents, have to have all sorts of issues. And like Jeff said, when it gets under that type of situation, then that could kick in too, and then it's in the ordinance that they have to pay for their fair share of it. But we will probably have to do the work to get them, but we will have to collect the money.
There's already mechanisms for that, so we don't need to add anything additional.
Who does own that property, Jim?
What's that?
Who's common area? For like Baker's Point, there's an 11-acre woods out there.
Who owns it?
To be
Is
deeded
DR
to
Hall
the
gonna own that forever?
Baker's Point
To be
HOA.
deeded to the HOA, that's how ours are.
Yeah, yours all went up for sale a few years
Yes,
ago.
well,
They
If we did it to
did.
the
Before they were deeded to the HOA, they went up for sugar sale, yeah.
So so the question is, what happens if the HOA dissolves? How does that?
Well, the membership, when a corporation or any entity dissolves, the interest in the property goes equally to the members by Indiana corporate law.
They gotta collect tax money from everybody then?
I would
Save
think,
your dues.
yep.
It's better to keep.
So-
The HOA so it doesn't have taxes.
Are there laws that towns can enforce? Like, we are approving developments knowing there's an HOA to deal with these things. Can we not allow it to dissolve? Do they have to notify
know.
the town that
Jeff
it's
Graham?
dissolving?
That's a good question.
It can be required as part of a plating and, that there be an HOA. If there's not an HOA, then it's a violation of primary plat. And at that point, you can enforce any of your planning statutes.
But what
But
about
it is already
after
required.
15 years later,
Yeah.
that they decide?
They decide to wanna pay.
How does that work?
So what's
Like,
So-
what if
so-
all the people in the neighborhood vote to dissolve the HOA in 20 years?
Cause we only require it at when they're platting, like they have to give us a set of bylaws to prove they have an HOA and then we approve their secondary plat and all this, that, but the next. After it's built 10 years from now, all the people there can say, well, we don't want this anymore. And we don't have anything in our code right now that
Good.
says,
I mean,
you have
would
to inform us that you're dissolving this.
Well,
So,
I think as a
Do we
town,
have the
would
power to
want
say they
know.
can't dissolve?
No.
I don't think we would have that power.
No, we don't have that power.
Well,
We even
can,
require these to have HOAs.
We do, yeah. we got
can
that
we
covered.
require them to notify us when they dissolve and a plan of action and how they are going to address all the areas that require funding? And I'm
Like a
asking this
notice of-
because, you know, you have HOA funds going in for duplexes, for shared roofs and
why don't we do this? Let's table this because this is an issue that I especially have what happened in your neighborhood.
It's a big problem.
yeah, that's why I
Pinnacle Point.
never want to.
So,
Pendle Point, those people can't get along.
yeah.
Let's fight about the HOA every month.
Wow.
Let's fight about the fees they want to pay.
Let's research on how much jurisdiction power, whatever the town has for what happens if they, what are our options if they do
Right.
dissolve, and do we have the power to stop it, which I doubt. But
And also, how do we then, it sounds like we already have that, but collect money for the work that we would have to do to abate the problem.
I mean,
Right.
could you just force, management by an HOA management company and send them the bill? I mean,
I think their
Oh.
needs going to reflect, you know, the ownership if that HOA dissolves. I mean, it should already reflect their piece of the pie as far as their ownership of the common space. The deed should include that.
And if it doesn't, there's Indiana corporate law that would say that it all goes equal parts to the former members. That's,
Herrick Glen, those properties that align, the pines, they chose to incorporate that into their own individual lot, property.
Yeah, they're still confused by that.
So
Joint
it's.
tenant.
I don't mow it.
Yes,
By
you
different
do. Subdivisions.
I'll just get out my mower,
Mhm.
and that's what's happening in
It's
each
not
and
balanced.
every section.
So, I mean, eventually what I think is, when it comes to a head, out of an example, we'll go in and at our billing rate, go and do the work, but whatever is necessary, if through a contractor or our own forces, and we'll divide that bill up.
It's like what we do with,
corner.
you know,
yeah.
overgrown houses where there's not
Yeah.
owner, we go in and, because it's.
After
starting to
due
become
process, if
unsightly.
they don't clean it up, then we do.
And then we build them and put it on their
Yep.
tax.
Like if there's overgrown common areas.
just treat them just as if they're not an addition at all, just a standard property owner that requires services by violation of the SA building volume stormwater ordinance.
And also, wouldn't the county be able to step into, because that is draining into a regulated
County
drain
has-
actually?
County has jurisdiction, even the stuff just with members.
Yeah, so if there was something
They're
that was,
violating the pond ordinance or the.
right,
Yeah.
that's messing with their drain, that they would also have to do something
Correct.
about it. Okay.
So table item 2,
Okay,
item 3, right?
yes. All right, so we're on 3. So this is some electric installation development process language that Craig asked me to put in here. So you can read right now it says this kind of thing, that the acknowledgement agreement shall be signed before the primary plat is approved. Granted, this is in the primary plat section, but I'd like to add, this also has to be done before site plan reviews are approved, or any application for utility services.
So a little bit
Yeah.
of background on this. So what is starting to happen, transformers have gone
Through the roof.
pre COVID, were, let's just say they're roughly around $1,000 and change. Now, in some cases, depending on how quickly you need it, that same transformer now costs $10,000. And so we're one of the communities that uses our own forces to install the power poles, the boxes, transformers, for the development. It's other communities, you know, they have the developer, and then they reimburse us at a billing rate, it's an ordinance. And then, other communities, a developer comes in and they just pay a contractor to put in all their electric, and then the town or the city takes it over, right? In some places, there's starting to be fewer and fewer that you just go ahead and install all that to the meter and then not charge. Well, that's impractical. Most of those communities are gonna quickly move away from that, because when transformer now costs $1,000
rate of return is gonna be now decades and decades versus now that it's $10,000. It's getting to be a problem. And then we've had a couple of developers say, well, you never told us you were gonna charge us for that. I think we did $500,000. We've been making it clear up front, but now they are claiming that we never said that, so we want to at least get them to acknowledge that, sign something so they acknowledge up front. So,
And we should reinforce it in the, schedule of charges too, that language to make sure it pairs up.
Yeah, we're kind of updating quite a few documents to reflect this, so the fee schedule, the
Yeah.
provisions that are on the platting and the site plan reviews, and then also that utility application will have this as an appendix to it.
So the price list will say market.
it's, well, it's,
Yeah.
It's
Market
a
price.
Material plus 15% handling, and then there's a billing rate that's for the
Yeah.
labor, and then we bill for the equipment on site.
So do we have an acknowledgement agreement signed for Baker's Point? Because we just approved the primary plat.
They wouldn't be in there yet. So,
But that's what this says, though.
Yeah, no, we.
An
we don't- we
acknowledgement
haven't had
agreement
one.
shall be signed before the primary
well,
plat is approved.
so we're doing this in different layers, so that's one place. The other thing is we're gonna send them a letter. Also, we're gonna say, we're also gonna give them a rough estimate.
So this is one of those things where this code book is so big that there are things that aren't paid that it mentions, and this is one of those things. So we don't.
Well,
have
that's
all
why
of
you
it.
always refer, what trumps it all is your tariff, which we don't call it, that schedule of fees for the utilities. Just like system development fees, we're not specific in here, but it's specific in your utility. I'm gonna always say tariff, but
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
So just making sure those schedules of rates and charges, the tariffs, are where we need them to be.
Yeah.
And then-
we
And-
updated them twice since I've been here, so I've been here about 4 years. So.
Yeah.
And Craig does estimates for folks when they come in with a project, on request. He's gonna just start doing it anyway, without any requests, whether they want it or not.
Yeah, we had a case where a property owner said, I never got the estimate, but we gave it to the general contractor. He
Right.
said, I don't, he said that.
Right.
Greg said,
So
"Okay."
this is one of those things where if we had it signed, it wouldn't matter if we had given it to the contractor or to the owner. It was.
So like
CBA.
on Baker's Point, section 1, we're gonna require that they sign that agreement prior to approving. those
Yes,
plans.
there's secondary plat.
Yeah.
Because typically, because we don't have that form, well, we just, came up with it. We wouldn't typically have it in the secondary platting phase. We would just do it with the primary, but with this case, we'll do it with the
We
secondary.
need it in different places because almost 100%, we've gone through 3 superintendents of developments. It's never the same person. So conversation you had with the initial guy just, of course, doesn't get carried through. And so we're just, okay, we're just gonna make you acknowledge up front. It's in at least 2 different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like that our utility workers are putting it in.
And the
It's,
contract.
it's consistent. You always wanna know what's in your ground. Have
Yeah, that's the
control on
main
that.
reason they started doing it.
Yeah.
For that, they wanna know, A, what was being put in, was put in right. Where it is, right, town started doing this well before GIS days,
Yep.
right, so.
And
So
that
there
it's
might be other
quality.
places where, we can repeat this language if necessary. Cause I looked in like the site's plan specific, flow chart and like, there's not really a place for it. So I thought I'd kind of just mention it all in one spot. But we can always repeat it somewhere else if we need to in other sections of the code. That's fine. So is that number 3 okay with everybody?
As long as you correct spelling the primary.
I already did. Thank you, Kyle. Can you go through my UDO and pick out all the spelling?
Too many-
Because there's not a
too many
spell check
pages, too
on
many pages.
Illustrator, so. I find them as I go. And then the last one I have, we ran into this recently, when we get as-built for infrastructure, this just says digital, which, you know, to you and I is probably a GIS, but to some folks is either a CAD or a PDF or a picture.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify this, that means a GIS geocoded file. Because that's what we need to put in our GIS system for the utility departments.
Okay.
Like georeference shapefile or?
Yeah. Georeference, geocoded. GIS adjacent. Okay, so those are the only two we have, so we'll need a motion and a vote on the 3 and 4 as discussed, and we'll table 1 and 2 till next meeting. And look into that.
Hearing that said, I entertain a motion to adopt changes to items 3 and 4 for the UDO amendments, and we're gonna table 1 and 2 for further information.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Second, all those in favor of the number 3 and number 4 changes as stated, not please say aye. Those opposed? Any other further questions from anybody?
Lynn?
Lynn?
Anything?
Marissa? Yeah. Board? Meeting adjourned.